Hi everyone, and welcome to our first lecture for consumer behavior. We're going to start off this semester by talking about why consumer behavior is important. Why should we even study or talk about consumer behavior? To understand consumer behavior, you have to understand the meaning of consumption and consumer behavior. Consumption is when you consume something, you use something that you have purchased. And consumer behavior is the behavior that surrounds consumers, how they go about choosing things or how they react to things that they have chosen or have purchased. Consumer behavior refers to the thoughts and actions of human, but is also an entire field of study. It's a body of knowledge accumulated in explaining the actions, reactions, and consequences of consumers. When it comes to human behavior, consumer behavior, it's the activities that take place as people go about addressing and attempting to address the needs or wants that they have. When persons realize that they have this specific need or want, a process comes forth, a process kicks in. This process kicks in as the consumer sets out to find ways how they're going to fill this need or this want. This process is known as the basic consumption process. First of all, there's a need or want that's triggered that leads to some sort of exchange, either exchange of information or money. There's a cost and a benefit that's incurred from you getting that product or service. There's a reaction that you realize once you get that product or that service. Are you happy? Are you unhappy? And then there's the resulting value. Is that product or that service something that you see value in? And depending on what happens, it will take you back to that need or that want. When we talk about consumption, what do we mean? Consumption is the process by which goods, services, or even ideas are used and transformed into value. The marketer and the consumer interact to produce value, and we know from all of our interactions with businesses is if this interaction is not good, it's going to reduce the value that the consumer sees. Consumption outcomes affect consumer well-being by affecting the quality of life. As a field of study, consumer behavior is the science of studying how consumers seek value in an effort to address their real needs. It's a very young field of study. Books on consumer behavior date from probably only the early 1960s. Consumer behavior researchers continue to expand the knowledge base at a fast pace by ensuring that consumer behavior is studied regularly. If you've been in classes with me before, you would have heard me say that there's marketing in everything. It's at the center of everything that we do. And here we see a perfect example of how consumer behavior relates to so many commonplace industries and fields of study. Consumer behavior relates to economics. It's all about the law and it's all about neuroscience, how people think, how they behave. It relates to anthropology when you look at things like finance and political science. It relates to psychology in terms of statistics and organizational relations and organizational management. And of course, sociology in terms of it being from a historical perspective and a management perspective. So think about it for 1 second. How can competitive marketing environments lead to better outcomes for consumers? Do you think that they can be? If companies decide to get more competitive, does that possibly lead to a better product or a better service for the consumer? To answer this, you have to think possibly of one, how competitive is the current marketing environment? And how dependent is the marketer on repeat business? These two things can affect the competitive nature of your marketing environment. Here are some key terms that we're going to see now and throughout this semester. First of all, there's consumer orientation, market orientation. Consumer orientation is where a business's priority is consumer value and satisfaction. Market orientation is where that organizational culture emphasizes consumer value. We're also seeing more and more mentioned now stakeholder marketing. It recognizes that all your stakeholders are involved in or are affected by your firm's marketing in some way, and they definitely are. Then we have relationship marketing. This is where a firm's marketing activities aim to increase repeat business. It's not just about the transaction. It's making sure that that consumer buys from you and continues to buy from you because they have a solid relationship with you. And then we have touch points. These are all the points, the direct points of contact between the firm and the consumer. So, what do you think is the role of consumer behavior in business and society? Well, first of all, from a business perspective, it allows you a certain input that can help you formulate your business or your marketing strategy. Consumer behavior is also a force that shapes society. As consumers, how we behave affects the products that are offered, the services that are offered, and how businesses operate. It also allows you to make more responsible decisions as a consumer. Studying consumer behavior can support what is sometimes called the advantage theory. This theory seeks to explain why companies succeed or why they may fail. They're saying that in the advantage theory, companies succeed by acquiring more resources from consumers and in turn using those resources to gain advantages either in physical or intellectual capital. So basically, the more information and feedback we get from the consumers is the more we can turn that information into positives for our businesses. So what happens when we buy something? When we buy something, a consumer is essentially giving up resources in the form of time, money, and energy in return for a product or service. It's not just that single product or service you're getting, it's a potential bundle of benefits. Emphasis in consumer behavior has to lie on the value that the customer receives rather than just the product or service itself. Let's take a look at the example of a fine dining restaurant, an expensive fine dining restaurant. As a consumer, you're going there because you probably want a very nice night out. You like it because the food is well prepared, it's of a high quality, the ambience is great, the service, and the overall dining experience. And you're willing to pay a higher than average price because of the bundle of benefits that you're getting. By understanding the behavior of our consumers, it also allows us as a business to decide what way we're going to do our business, what kinds of products and services we're going to offer. And this takes us back to principles of marketing. You can either have what we call undifferentiated marketing, where you're offering one product for the entire industry, for the entire segment. You're doing differentiated marketing, where you're offering different types of products to different segments, or niche marketing, where you're offering one product to one very small part of the segment. You're suiting the needs or you're satisfying the needs of a very targeted, very small part of the entire segment. Consumer behavior creates the society in which we live, and it serves as an important source of input to public policy and business in a free society. It allows us to answer such questions as, should public restrictions on mobile phone usage be created? How do we understand how we should answer something like that? Or should we even tamper with people's use of their mobile phones? By understanding consumer behavior, we can get more input or more feedback or more information on whether something like this should be done. Consumer behavior helps consumers make better decisions by understanding, for example, consequences of poor budgeting, the role of their emotions in making a purchase, the social influences that can impact what they buy and what services they experience, their avenues for redress if they're unhappy with a product that they've purchased, and the environmental factors that affect their purchases or the environmental effects of the things that they buy. From this first lecture, I also want you to be familiar with some of the basic approaches to studying consumer behavior. Let's take a look now at some of the different approaches to studying consumer behavior. First of all, you have interpretive research, which seeks to explain the inner meanings and motivations associated with certain consumption experiences. It's a form of qualitative research where there are two common orientations. First of all, and I always butcher this word, but you have phenomenology. It represents the study of consumption as a living experience, something that moves, something that changes all the time. And then you have ethnography. It involves analyzing the artifacts associated with consumption, that is, the product or service and the consumer. Then you have quantitative research. It addresses questions about consumer behavior using numerical measurement and analysis tools. It is not really dependent on the researcher, but on the information, the quantity of information gathered from the respondents. And it does not require deep interpretation because you're using a lot of statistical calculations and formula to analyze the information and data. To explain ethnography, just look at how sporting fans turn memorabilia into this great thing of value. So, for example, you see things like your favorite football team's jersey. It's just a jersey, but look at the price that a lot of consumers pay for that jersey, and look at how much pride and how much value they have when they wear it. This is what consumer behavior researchers do when they study ethnography. The artifacts, the things that we buy, and how much value we place into those things. As a field of study, consumer behavior is very dynamic, and it's going to continue to be very dynamic because of the fast pace with which life is moving and with which consumer needs and wants are changing. And these needs and wants are changing because of things like globalization or internationalization. You have the technological changes that we're seeing in the industry and in society. We have the changing forms of communication, and we have changing demographics. You also have changes in the economy as well that are fueling consumer behavior changes. And that, everyone, brings us to the end of Lecture 1 for Consumer Behavior. Please ensure that you review your lecture, you ask any questions in the discussion forum, and you respond to the posted questions in the forum. Remember, it's a discussion, so you can also respond to, or you should also respond to, the comments posted by your classmates.